Hello and welcome to this episode of Life on the Pale Blue Planet. On this episode, I'll be talking about gossip, paparazzi, allegations, rumour, and our behaviour and our reactions to them. One of the greatest qualities of us as a human is our curiosity. It's that instinct that leads us to want to know, to want to learn, to improve ourselves, to question, to find out. It is a quality that has taken us a long way. Investigation, science, research, that desire to know more. However, there's also another side to our curiosity that turns up in our industry that has basically been built on gossip, rumour, scuttlebutt's one of the words, titillation. It's seen in the larger scale with celebrities and particularly with the royal family. We have seen particularly with Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, but even earlier on we go back to Princess Di and the reporting on her, the paparazzi, the chasing the pictures, the intrusion into private life, the long lens photographs, that desire to get some bit of information, to get a photograph, to get some insight. And the way the paparazzi works is to sell a photograph, they need to sell a story that goes with it. So whilst they get a photograph, quite often they need to invent a story that goes with it. So it may be someone's pregnant again, someone has dropped someone, a relationship issue, someone's now dating. It's quite often something that is fictitious, but it sells a story. So in this case, we have an industry, we have professionals making money out of photographs and false stories. And there's usually no end of people trying to talk to the former maid, sisters, mothers, aunt, who has a story about someone or pretends to have a story about someone, and often these are completely untrue. But now we have a source of information, and that makes it so much better. It's credible. Now we can actually put a source. Many of these stories, though, come from the wonderful unnamed sources, which is an interesting part that we give credibility to it, and we'll come to that shortly. In this case, we know why people do it. Basically, it's done for money. It's an industry, it keeps people working. It has been something that's been around for quite a while, though. If we go back even previously to newspaper days, there were the social columns or the society pages, which would be full of who dined with whom, who's seen dating with whom. And again, it was basically just gossip, story, something though that captivated us. And it's interesting that it does captivate us, this need to know why we're so curious by this and why we fund the whole industry with this curiosity. The reason that this industry exists is because it sells magazines, it sells paper, it provides click-through on the internet, it gets you followers on Twitter. There is an appetite to want to know these things. Now in this case, it's curious as to what the reaction to it is. People want to know this, but do they believe it, or is it just taken with a grain of salt, or in many cases it's just some entertainment? Oh, what's this trashy magazine got to print today, and what's the latest wild story? It's a light-hearted way of passing 5 minutes, and it fills some time. But it can also be taken as being very serious and can be taken as being true. And that certainly has been the case in coverage, say, of the royal family and other celebrities, where there's just been a deliberately targeted campaign of false stories. And it has had quite serious impacts on the people. So we have to look at ourselves firstly and think, why do we entertain this idea? Why are we indulging in something that we know can be so hurtful and damaging and fictitious? Is it voyeurism? Is it wanting to know that these people are like us? Is it wanting to get the insight, wanting to know something? It's a really interesting question as to why this whole industry exists. We feed the industry. It is our desire for it that is the reason that it keeps going. Our reaction to that is also interesting. What do we do when we read these stories? Do we choose to believe it, or do we just throw it away? And that is definitely a choice that we make when it comes to these things. We also have had a recent case in our parliament in Australia which looks at the strength of allegation, and is a similar thing. We had a senator who had a number of allegations of some form of sexual misconduct made against him. They sort of came in fairly quick succession. And there was a very swift reaction to those allegations, which was threatening to throw the person out of the party. There were calls in the media from the parliament for him to resign from Parliament. There was a really strong reaction. And this was all done before there'd basically been any investigation or anything done to verify these claims. They were taken as true, and action was taken on that. Now, it may turn out to be that these accusations are true, and with proper investigation and some due process, the truth of these allegations or otherwise will certainly come out. And if they turn out to be true, then the actions taken will be appropriate, and that would be the appropriate time. But there's this interesting propensity to have believed and acted on these accusations. And again, it comes down to why we have acted in that way. Why we chose to believe. Why do we choose to believe? Again, it is something that we do. Belief is a choice. What truth is what we believe. It is a choice that we make. This then brings us down to part 3, is basically just gossip and rumours. And this can be part socially of any group, workplaces, organisations, can be from sporting clubs. It can be basically any group of people are involved. There will usually be, unfortunately, some sort of gossip, rumour-mill circulates at the time. Mostly we're hoping it's some sort of harmless, something that occurs in the background and not to be worried about. However, it can have quite strong effects when people choose to believe this gossip and choose to act on it. I have previously worked in workers' compensation, where we have dealt with cases of psychological injury that in the main have been due to the pressure of gossip and rumour in the workplace. It has usually been a case of a slow water torture. There's just been just a little drip, drip, drip of matters that have occurred, things that have been said, and has built up over time. Often then this has turned into cliques forming in the workplace, people for or against the person, and behaviour has changed towards that person that has affected that person. And it can have affected them to the level where they have had a psychological injury. They have been distressed. Their work performance has dropped. They may have gone into like a depressive episode or even a PTSD matter, all because of gossip, rumour, innuendo. And this has often happened amongst intelligent professional people in workplaces where these are people you would expect to know better. But why has this flourished? I was speaking to someone recently about this very matter. They had heard something and had acted accordingly to what they heard, but hadn't bothered to actually check if what they heard was true. And their reaction was, I didn't have to check if it was true, it made sense to me. which gives a clue to sometimes how these rumours and gossip manage to spread. Is because the people who hear it make sense of it, or they believe it helps make sense to them. It helps organise the universe a little bit better for them, and that's something often we feel like. If something makes sense to us, we can believe it. I think one of the second components then comes down to who is the source of the gossip or the rumour. If it's coming from someone we know or someone we believe to be a credible source, then we will probably be believing it. We're more likely to believe it. A recent incident where something happened and the people, however, were shown evidence that what was told to them wasn't true. Even being shown that, though, they chose to still believe what was told to them. And this was an interesting reaction to see. And I thought about why this might be so. And this goes back to the credible source. If a good friend or someone has told you something and you're then shown it's not true, you're now left in a cognitive dissonance between, do I believe what the person said, or do I have to believe that the person has now lied to me, or used me, or manipulated me? Now that can be an uncomfortable thought, and a thought that people aren't prepared to accept. So even in the light of evidence, it appears they'll go with, no, I will believe this story even though I've shown it to be true, because the alternative of having to believe this about my friend or this person I know is too hard to accept. When someone is telling you something that is basically gossip, allegation, rumour, innuendo, one of the questions you should be asking yourself is, why is this person telling me this bit of information? What is their motive for doing so? It is possible it is malicious, and we'll often see this when there is some politics being played, particularly in the true sphere of politics, when somebody wants to gain something, and they can gain it by discrediting or hurting someone else. In politics, I think it's called backgrounding. Someone will leak information to a journalist or be distributing notes and dirt files run on people. So the idea is to discredit your opponent to get some gain for yourself. And that's a fairly obvious case of how this happens. In something where it's more personal, again, you have to ask, what is this person's motivation? And it's quite possibly the same. They are seeking to gain something out of telling you this information and getting you to change your beliefs, change your attitude, change your behaviour towards the person that they are talking about. So really, when someone is telling you this, really think to question why it is being told. This is so very important. Then look at your willingness to believe and accept something just because it is being told to you, even if it comes from a credible source. A case in point, that someone that I had known for a while sort of vanished for a while, and I wondered what happened. And I got to read in the paper that this person had been sent to jail. And that's obviously why they'd vanished for a while. And from what the paper reported, it really didn't sound very good. It wasn't a great report on the activities, what the person had done, the way it was written up. And I thought, this really doesn't sound like the person I know, but here's some facts in front of me. So on many levels, it would have been understandable to just decide, right, well, this is a terrible person, I'll have nothing to do with them again. But that is not the choice I made. I wanted to hear the other side of the story. So it took some time until eventually the person returned, and I was able to catch up with them, and I was able to get their side of the story. And whilst, yes, they had done what was reported, that was a fact, the reasons for doing so, which we can't mention, were out of, it was a misguided sense of loyalty to someone, trying to help someone and trying to do the right thing. So the motivation was good, it was just the execution of doing the right thing was poor. So on that basis of now hearing the other side of the story, I didn't ditch that person, and we're still in contact, and I haven't thrown them away. So this highlights one of the important parts of gossip and innuendo is looking for the other side of the story. Now, it's often said there are two sides to the story. Sometimes it says there are three sides: his version, their version, and the truth that lies somewhere in the middle. But hearing one side of a story and acting on it, I think, shows an insecurity in ourselves. It shows that we have doubt, that we doubt our judgment of the person. If our assessment of someone can be so readily changed by one item of gossip from someone, what does it say about what we think was our judgment? Do we now think, my God, I was wrong, I misjudged this person? Have we so little faith in our assessment of other people? It really is then a weakness or a self-doubt in the person who hears this and changes their opinion. Of course, the person who starts the rumour and spreads is also displaying a weakness. It is an effective strategy. There's a saying, throw enough mud and some will stick. So it's really easy to do, and it's very indirect because you don't have to confront the person. You don't have to speak to them. This can all get done in the background. And again, this will show a weakness in the person who is doing it. Now, while there's often the appearance that this is a strong person, a powerful person who is doing this, and quite often they may be doing it from a position of power. And this is what we'll see in the political sphere, in political parties and other organisations where this is done. There are professional people, and that's the numbers men, the faceless men, the people who will throw this out because they can. And people will believe them because of the power. But at a more personal level, it is, again, it's a weakness. It's often an inability to have a conversation. It's a person may appear strong, but this is really a show of something that is quite weak in their character for it. And I think we can often misinterpret people who do this. It is really different. I think we have to separate the rumour mill and the gossip scandal industry, which involves people that we are not connected with. We have no attachment. Celebrities, the royal family, we know their names. We don't actually know them. There's no personal connection to them. We get down into some of the big organisations. There is some degree of attachment in there, so their action becomes a bit more important and our reaction becomes a bit more important. Then it comes down to people where we actually do have a connection or a level of attachment to. People we know, people we deal with daily. So in this case, our reaction to gossip, innuendo, allegation is far more important and have a much greater impact on people. And I don't think we consider this. What impact does our behaviour, our listening to gossip, our changing our opinion, maybe changing the way we treat someone based on gossip, going to affect them? And why are we having that effect? What is in us that has made us change to do that? Why will we cut the person off, maybe be rude to them? Why will we Why will we spread the story about them? Why will we partake in this game to discredit someone? Rumours spread because people also are willing to repeat it. Whether that's part of that part where you've got a secret and you know something someone else doesn't know, so you've got that little bit of superiority, or whether it's being communal, that we know all this information, we are the people that know this information. But there is this behaviour to go and spread gossip, to tell people for it, even when we're unsure if it was true. And that's how it spreads. It's called the rumour-mill. It just churns out. It goes to one person, tells two people, who they tell two people, and it can just spread exponentially. But we very rarely stop and consider the consequences of what we do. In the case of people who are detached, there's probably no accountability, that our action will have no impact upon that person. When it is someone we are attached to, our behaviour will impact that person and we don't consider it. Now, whether that impact can be their reputation, whether it affects their business, whether it affects their mental health, these are really serious effects and outcomes from our choice to believe and act upon gossip. And I think we really need to consider that more strongly. And before we go and react to gossip, and before we go and spread it, try and make ourselves part of the group, or we're all the people that know. Consider the impact on the person. What are we doing to that person, and why? So not only is the person who starts the gossip and spread it, why is their motive to be considered? So is ours. Why am I repeating this bit of information? Why am I telling people? Why am I trying to discredit someone through a piece of information that I don't even know it is true? It's unverified. This is a really curious behaviour and does show some of the worst of our behaviour. And I believe we need to be better than that. Rumour mills and gossip is one of the biggest things that needs to be shut down. We need to not be so ready to accept things that we hear. We need to question more. Our curiosity needs to be directed to ask the person who tells you something, why? How do you know? Why are you telling me this? What is your reason? If we put these questions to people first and get those answers, get that motivation from the person and get an insight into that person, that is far more important than simply parroting what someone else has been saying. It is up to us to become better people and stop these rumour mills, to stop the effects on people who are badly affected by the rumour mills, to take accountability for our actions that will impact upon people. And often this is people, they've done nothing wrong with you, they haven't affected you, but we have changed because we've heard about something else. That is not being the best person we can be. And I do think we need to be better. So I hope some people will take away from this, have a think about, have I been involved in spreading gossip? Have I started gossip? If someone has spread some gossip to me, have I thought about why they do it? Have I looked more deeply into it? Asking these questions of ourselves and other people can only lead to being better people. So this is one thing I'd really want you to take home, consider, think about. I'd also love to know your thoughts in the comment section. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on the podcast, love to know any stories where you have been involved in this or what your thoughts are. So I'd love to open a conversation on this matter. The next podcast is called I'll Be There For You, and that of course reflects the title song of the long-running series called Friends. And in that podcast, that's what we'll be talking about: friends and entering the friend zone. I hope again it will be an insightful podcast that makes you examine yourself and a few things and ask a few questions. Until then, take care, be good, work on being the best version of yourself possible. Until then.